Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Lawrence Conley and remotely by Brian Degning. We're here to cover the big game at Celtic versus Aberdeen. ACSOM are well represented at Celtic Park today, and we are here. Lawrence is just getting stuck into some lockets, but we do have half-time pies. We've seen the team lines. I'm going to come to you first, Brian. We'll run through the team in more detail, but what's your thoughts, first and foremost? One forced change at least, and another change from Thursday night.
Yeah, it's interesting. Forrest drops out. We're sort of chatting off air. Maybe it's playing most of the game was a bit much for him coming back for injury. It'd be interesting to see how Abada reacts to that, because I feel like this is a very big day for him. Because his form's been a bit inconsistent. Forrest has come back in. I thought was excellent in Germany. So it'd be interesting to see how if Abada can sort of step up. But of course, the big headline news is your boy McCarthy making his is that his first start of the season? Second,
I think.
He started against Dundee United and he started against Wraith Rovers, didn't he?
Oh, the cup, right.
Yeah.
Interesting to see how he does. And I'm going to say something I didn't think I'd ever say. I'm absolutely gutted Beaton's injured, because his form lately has been very good. He's been on a real upward trajectory back in midfield and really seems to have been playing probably his best stuff since he's been at Celtic, I would say. Maybe that's an overstatement, but I thought he was exceptional against Leverkusen. And I think when he went off, there was a real drop-off in quality in midfield in terms of how we defended. So, but again, like Abada, big game for McCarthy today to try and stake his claim, because right now he seems to be sort of third choice pick for that number 6 role after McGregor and Beaton.
Yeah.
Big testing.
Listen, I think that's a good point. I'll throw this over to Lawrence, because we've spoken about Beaton in the past on A Celtic State of Mind. Potentially that wee patch of form there was his finest in a Celtic jersey, Lawrence, but you spoke about Beaton last season and the role that he might play this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think last season we were wondering who's going to replace Scott Brown, and I'd said, well, look, I think Beaton's a man, and I think under Dale, you had some cracking games, defensive midfield. It's his more natural position. Take him a wee while just to relearn things and what to do, but I agree with Brian, was brilliant over in Germany, and him going off probably cost us. With him on, I could have seen us holding out for 2-1. McCarthy, for me, I think I've said a few times, our best midfield for me is Beaton, McCarthy, McGregor, with Turnbull and Roderick available to come off the bench. But James has got to deliver, hasn't he? He's been here a while. I know Ange just said he's not at the pre-season, but they've obviously got Scott Brown on their side. We're going to need to win this midfield. And we know Scott's the ultimate competitor, isn't he?
Absolutely, Lawrence. I've not actually had a chance on A Celtic State of Mind, at least, to discuss Thursday night, because obviously after that, on the Friday, we had Jared, Laura and Tony talking about the game. And I think what I noticed online, certainly on social media, on the social media channels, is there was a couple of different views in relation to the substitutions on 70 minutes. There were also comments after the game in relation to substitutions. And I totally get that, yes, you're looking at that bench and, you're if you're going to do like for like in terms of positionally, you're definitely not going to be doing like and like in terms of standard, because an Ayeti for Kyogo kind of move is always going to weaken your side, or a Jota for Mikey Johnson's always going to weaken your side as well. And Forrest, again, we'll talk about Forrest, but Forrest for Abada was weakening the front line. But my point wasn't so much the defensive, the actual standard of the substitutes coming on. It was more of you've got 20 minutes to hold on. But I'm being constantly reminded Ange won't do that. And Jared was in on Friday talking about it. He says Ange will not hold on. He'll go for the third goal when he's 2-1 up. And I think he'd done himself a wee bit of a disservice at the end of the game, because he was saying we're not at this level. But I thought we proved for, 80 minutes that we were. We actually were at that level. And I think that, just that tweak in his game plan might have got us a result. But I think that I'm in the minority in saying that, Brian. What's your thoughts on sitting at 2-1 up, with 20 minutes to go, and making those changes that don't really change the shape in any way, shape or form, but it's really like for like, and also your quality is diminished when you take off the likes of Jota and Kyogo. Yes, I get that, you're looking on a bench with the likes of Urigide, Scales, who's barely kicked the ball for Celtic, etc. But at that point, obviously, Beaton's still on the park. You've got Sorrow and McCarthy on the bench. What's your thoughts on it? Because I appreciate from looking online that I'm in the minority with my view that, let's shut up shop for 20 minutes and come home with at least a draw.
I've got to say, Paul, I disagree, because I actually think that we looked like we started to drop off, and we almost looked like the players were trying to hold on for the last 20 minutes, and I think that's what cost us. I don't think going for the goal to get the third goal cost us. I think it was the fact we started sitting a bit deeper, because we started inviting pressure, and we had more pressure in that last 15 minutes than we had the entire game. And Leverkusen were good, by the way, so we lost to a very, very good side. But I actually think, and I'll talk about the substitutions in a sec, but when we did make the subs, you could see the team started sitting a bit deeper, and it was almost like the players still had that mentality of, we need to hold on to this. And I think that's actually maybe what Andrew's referring to when he said we're not at this level. And I don't think he meant the 11 players that started. I think he meant A, the squad, and B, mentally, to actually say, no, let's not drop back, let's keep going. They're there for the taking. Where I will criticise Ange, though, is I understood taking Forrest off because he was tiring. Kyogo, I felt, could have rid out the rest of the game.
Yeah.
But I'm really baffled by taking off Jota. I thought that was a huge error, because he was still running up and down. He was working really hard, and then drop off in quality. And I'm not going to kick Mikey Johnson when he's down. I've already said I don't think he's got the quality to be a Celtic player longer term. But I think you really saw the stark contrast between Jota and Mikey Johnson when that switch was made. Ayeti, we know he's nowhere near Kyogo's level. I was a bit... Abada was a funny one, because I've been no defensive, but I've tried to defend him this season when he's been criticised. But again, the drop-off in quality when he came on for Forest was huge. And again, what happened was you lost both that attacking press and the defensive work rate. So then when Beaton goes off, you start sitting a bit deeper. And I think that's what cost us. So I know some of the viewers think we agree on everything, but I've got to disagree, because I just think that if we had been able to stick with that attacking game plan, and the players had really kept the ball in there, I think we got away with the win. I actually think inviting pressure is what's cost us.
Well, you're right. We don't agree on a lot of things, Brian, particularly in the WhatsApp group. But so I'm not sure where that comes from. But I have heard it said. We've spoken about Forrest and Abada. Let's have a wee chat about that on the right hand side. I think it's tremendous that we do have the option there, Lawrence, to rest Forrest. And yeah, we know he's played a lot of football in his career for Celtic. 434 games now. That was his 434th appearance. On Thursday night, he was outstanding. I mean, his part in that goal, and I think that goal is one that we're going to be watching for years and years to come. It was a thing of absolute beauty from the moment Hart played the first pass, the involvement of Forrest with the flick, and then the pass in. Absolutely tremendous impact that he had. And by the way, by the time Jota gets the ball, there's still loads of work to be done, and what a finish it was. But the very fact that we've got that option outright is brilliant. But I think what Ange is looking for is to have that level, even though I agree with Brian in that Abada has dropped off a bit in terms of his own displays, to have that kind of level every area of the park. So, at the moment, Jota drops out. Who do you bring in? Well, you're bringing in less quality. Forrest drops out. Yeah, I know that Abada's not on the same level overall as Jamesy Forrest, but he still makes an impact, doesn't he? I don't see much impact from Mikey Johnson. Going forward, if Turnbull drops out, Rogic comes in, and both players can make an impact. And I think that is really the standard. And hopefully, once we move into January, we can come out of that transfer window in much better shape. But what's your thoughts on the right-hand side, Lawrence? Is this Ange being cute and just using Jamesy Forrest at this stage of his career? I mean, he's hardly old. He's only 30, but he has played a lot of football. And he's coming back from a long-term injury, isn't he?
I think he's probably managing him back from the injury. I think it's more likely to do with that. He's not dropped out, the squad altogether. It's a change we'll probably expect to see. At some point in the game that he'll get some more minutes in his legs. But he's maybe just thought, look, that was a hard shift. We don't want to risk maybe him doing his hamstring or something again. We'll maybe give him 20 minutes towards the end. So I think probably that's why Forrest has dropped out. But back to kind of Thursday's game and how do you hold on? I actually thought, even though we're 2-1 up, we were holding on. Hearts had some massive saves, but I'm just saying, what's best to hold on? Is it to have attacking players and to stretch the pitch and to try and pin them back, or is it to invite pressure on us? Because I think, if we'd invited the pressure, which we seem, get what Brian said, we did seem to sit about 10 yards deeper, but if we put another defensive midfielder and just dropped altogether, it's no guarantee that you're going to go out 2-1 winning. Leverkusen's a really decent team. Hearts had some fantastic saves.
Oh, he did.
I mean, that boy, it just looked like a tap in.
That was unbelievable.
It's...
See, the thing, Lawrence, yourself, having been in the studio so many times during the match day, I take notes minute by minute. So every single game since we've been in the studio, there's journals and journals of notes. And see the amount of games this season where Hart has made an outstanding save, and then within 5 minutes, we've scored a goal.
Yep.
Incredible, the impact he's had at this football club.
Definitely. So I think Thursday, how best to hold on, and I think it goes back to the interview Ange was doing about a week or so ago, saying, well, I need a result every week, and this is my best way to get a result. Mm-hmm. So for him, the best way to hold on was still try to push them back, although it didn't work, I mean, there was one time Johnson gets the ball on the left, and you're thinking, just hit it down the line and get it in the box. Oh, your job's to get the ball in the box, but what he's decided to do is to run to the defender. So he's actually closing the distance for the defender because he's ran at him, and he ends up not getting the ball across, and you're going, Mikey, you've just made that harder for yourself. You could have went out wider. The defender's not going to make up the ground and you'd get the ball in the box. It was, so, yeah. But, Mikey's really got to start getting in some performances. I understand he's been out with injury, but just that kind of decision-making, you were going, mate, if you'd went wide, the defender wasn't going to make the ground up. You've actually made it easier for him. There's no chance of you losing the ball if you go wide. You're getting in the box 100%. What you've decided to do is run at defender, and it's 50-50 whether the ball's going to get in the box there. So I thought, poor decision-making from Mikey. Leo Bad has been a bit hot and cold. I know Al Morrison has done his stats on him. He's got high impact because he takes risks. But yeah, he's only, 19, 20? So
yeah, 20-year-old.
We're expecting a lot from young players. And I understand Mikey's only, 22, 23, Turnbull's 22. So it is a fairly young team, which probably getting the likes of McCarthy on the park, obviously Beaton's 30 and Jamesy Forrest back, just that kind of experience in the team is going to help these young boys and in the squad as well. But I'm more happy, I think I agree with you, I'm more happy with the right than the left. I mean, we're still getting the Bellic come back from injury, the cracking pre-season.
You did, yeah.
On the left, I thought maybe Montgomery's a wee bit unlucky to have fallen out the picture altogether. Maybe he's a better replacement than Mikey Johnson for Jota. If you want to still stretch it, but he would add something a wee bit more defensively than Johnson would, as well as being able to stretch it.
Yeah, I did like the look in Montgomery. I felt quite sorry for the fact that he was being played out of his natural position at left back, although I thought he equipped himself very well there. But what it does do, Lawrence, as you say, is when he's playing left wing or on the left of the three, then his defensive work is there. It's in him because he's played quite a few games now at left back for Celtic. And I think that when I'm looking at the Forrest and Abada debate, it's a great debate to have. And it's great to have that once Tommy Rogic comes back, because you're going to have the same kind of dilemma with him and Turnbull. Other areas of the park were not so strong. Now Sean comes in. Let's have a wee look at some of these comments coming in. Sean's watching us on YouTube, very disappointed not to see Rogic back. Ange did say that he expected Tommy Rogic back this weekend and also beaten out as well. Abada, Turnbull, McCarthy really need to step up today. Well, Turnbull's one of these players who has undoubted talent. Absolutely no doubt about it. But just before we came on live once, we were having that discussion about the fact that he really does need to get that consistency in his game again. And yes, today is the kind of day that we need a big performance from our offensive players. What's your thoughts, Brian, on David Turnbull? Nobody doubts the talent in the boy. I've seen a lot of comments saying that he doesn't seem to step up for the big games in Europe. I think he's played a couple of decent games in Europe this season. But my kind of defence of Turnbull would be that I don't think Ange expected him to play as much football as he's been forced to play this season. He's not one of the guys we've been able to give a rest to, is he?
He is not, and I think with Turnbull, so I'm a big fan of him as a footballer. I think he's exceptional. Actually, I think he's so good on the ball. There's like a sort of a real football intelligence to him. My concern with Turnbull though is I don't think he's good enough off the ball to really thrive in Angie's team going forward. I think he tries and he's been trying to do it, but it's not a natural part of his game. He doesn't cover as much ground as he could. You see it in patches, like again against Ferencváros and Hungary. I thought it was excellent, and the way he fought when the ball back. So it's in his locker. It's just not a natural thing. The question for me is he going to get to the point where he's off the ball work matches, he's on the ball work? If it does, he's a real player for the future. But I'm a wee bit concerned because I feel like, and I'm just looking at our bench today, I feel like centre mid's a real concern for us moving forward, and it's an area where we've got to strengthen in January. And I think if we get two sort of quality midfielders, Turnbull could find himself on the bench more often than not.
That's an interesting one because, I mean, I'm like yourself, Brian. I think that when we signed him, he was that player in Scottish football that you knew he's going to go on to bigger things and Celtic should actually sign him. And there's a few at the moment kicking around Scottish football that I would feel the same way about. I don't know where our market is in January because everybody we seem to be linked to is elsewhere. But when we signed him, and then of course it took us a long time to actually get to see him, I just thought, he's one of these guys who's going to take that step up, start getting into the Scotland squad, get the European football under his belt, and he's done all of that. And I just think the progress has been really swift for him because he didn't, hit the ground running at the beginning of last season. It was midway through the season. And I just think that rest would do him the world of good, probably right now, in actual fact, but we just don't have the luxury of giving him the rest. Michael McDonald, I'm going to bring this up because I find it an interesting question, actually. What's the difference? Because we hear this, the football Bible, we hear all the language all the time. What's the difference between a philosophy and a system? Answers on a postcard. The way I look at it, and I could be wrong, I always look at a system as being your shape and your structure, whereas a philosophy is your style. That's the way I look at football, So you could have a shape, but you can also have a style of play, as well as actually having that shape, which in Angie's case seems to be fairly rigid. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Let's talk about McCarthy. James McCarthy's picture was on the team sheet, so you knew he was starting before you had a chance to read through. And over the last weeks and months, I've bored anybody that's tuned into ACSOM by continually saying that he's going to be the dark horse of that transfer window. When asked to back it up, how do I back that up? Is he the type of player that should be in an Ange team? Probably not. However, I didn't think Nir Bitton would have thrived in Ange Postecoglou's team, and he has. What I like about McCarthy and what I think he brings to the team that Bitton maybe doesn't is a more of a high intensity in terms of defence to attack, and that comes through his distribution. So he gets the ball and he can actually split it. We've not seen it a great deal with Celtic, maybe a couple of times, but he can make that defence splitting pass. And I'm not comparing him, but Paul Lambert was particularly good at that as well. He just gets that ball quite deep, and before you know it, he's released Jota or he's maybe released Kyogo. And I think that's what James McCarthy brings. We all know his situation, 30 years of age, 4-year contract. People are surprised at that. People have questioned whether Ange identified him. I doubt very much that he has, because that's the way Celtic work. There's loads of players identified by various different people at the club, and I'm pretty sure these are presented to the gaffer, and the gaffer's part of the final decision process. But I do like him. I've seen the comments under Celtic's team lineup in relation to McCarthy. A lot of Celtic fans don't think he should be starting. What's your thoughts on James McCarthy, Lawrence, at this stage? I mean, there's always this caveat, if we can keep him fit.
Listen, we got him on a free transfer, which probably explains why he got a 4-year deal as well. But the question on whether he fits an Ange system or even in Beaton, well, part of the reason we want Ange as a manager is got a track record of developing players and changing how they can play. some players will be able to adapt and some won't. So even with Turnbull, Brian's touching it, he's trying to adapt, and it's whether or not he can adapt. Well, part of that's going to be down to your manager and your coaching staff, how they can get their ideas across, and can they get the players to deliver in the park. But McCarthy's got a cracking pedigree, isn't he? You know, EPL level player. We were rumoured, what was in Aki's team at 16, first team.
Yeah, I think he was 15 when he made his debut. Was it 15 when he made his debut?
Yep. So, he's one of those players that we thought we'd missed out on. We should have probably taken him before Wigan taken him. A bit like the John McGinn saga, isn't it? So I think McCarthy's going to be able to deliver. You touched on it, it's a bit like Lambert. He got an assist kind of one of his early games, didn't he? Reverse ball through. Was
that against Wraith Rovers in the Cup, wasn't it?
Yep. And then the ball they released Turnbull down the line in Europe.
Yes.
Just absolutely changed the game. We were under a bit of pressure, and he just defensively, he's you almost give a goal away to come on, but generally he's pretty sound, isn't he? He covers the ground. He knows what areas that he should be in. I think he's going to be a brilliant signing for us if he's fit. For me, defensively, it's him and Beaton that's battling it out. I think McGregor's wasted back there. I don't think it's third choice. I think it's second choice to Beaton just now, and Beaton injured, it's up to him to try and make himself first choice. Where that leaves Sorrow, I don't know. I mean, for me, I'd rather have Scott Robertson on than Sorrow, but maybe we'll recall him in January. Who knows? I know he just picked up a 3-game ban there, but yeah, I think if I've got number 6 between Beaton and McCarthy, it's 2 really cracking players we've got there. Yeah, it's up to James to step up. As much as we're saying Turnbull's got to step up, it really is. But we need to keep James fit. But I think one of the injuries he picked up was a really bad tackle that, although we get a free kick, against United, it shouldn't have sent him off. Yeah, he's
on that list, Lawrence, that I'm keeping all season. All the red cards that weren't given.
Yeah, and that kind of stopped his. He'd obviously done enough to get in the team, and then some pretty hard.
He was really unlucky actually that day, wasn't he?
And, you're looking at the ref and go, well, where's the protection for players here? Well, for Celtic players, it's all kind of I care about. But yeah, he's on that list, no doubt, with Sean Rooney and Andy Halliday and Bobby Madden and whoever else.
He is on that list. There's half a dozen of them right now. But I'm sure that'll double by the end of the season.
Big game for him today.
Yeah,
he's got to understand he's up. He's going to be judged against. But Bruni's going to be a similar role for Aberdeen today, I'd imagine. So he'll have that in the back of his head. I need to be showing that I'm better than him.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam comes in with a great avatar of Robert Nesta Marley, who was a Celtic fan, by the way. McCarthy, good vision with his passes. That's exactly what I would say. That's the first thing I think of when I look at James McCarthy being in that team. And I also think that there's a good point coming through from Alex Shund. And signings press, run all day and fight for the ball. Anyone not meeting that criteria is not an Ange signing. And by Ange signing, I mean, what we're trying to say is that we know the process, and there's certain players that are directly identified by Ange, and there's certain players that are directly identified by the scouting team and the recruitment team. But according to Gordon Strachan, every player is run past the manager in the final stages of the process, and he's not going to say no to a Joe Hart or a James McCarthy, even when they're coming to the kind of end of their career as well. Because I've not had an opportunity to speak about Thursday night and the performance, I've also not had the opportunity to speak about Joe Hart and his performance on the night, which I thought was absolutely superb. And since then, I've been looking at him and the value for money, pound for pound, the best £1 million we spent in a long, long time, Brian. But again, it brings me back to this concern. Lawrence mentioned earlier on there about the midfield, Scott Robertson. He's almost like the forgotten man, a wee bit like Ewan Henderson. And you think, well, there's 2 guys in their early 20s who you would have thought would have been on the bench, like Montgomery, and the 2 Sheffield Wednesday boys that were brought in. But they're not. They're nowhere near it. They're getting loaned out. And, it looks almost as if their Celtic careers are coming to a premature end, which is quite sad because particularly Robertson, both those players looked as though they had something to offer. And at the moment, in terms of the goalkeeper situation, my biggest concern is if something happens to the big man, because he's been a revelation since he came in, Brian.
Absolutely. I'd mentioned on Wednesday I'm a huge fan of Al Morrison and his contributions. I find them fascinating. And he was talking about Bain and how Bain and Joe Hart are, they've got the same kind of roughly same amount of saves, very few, errors, stuff like that. But the unquantifiable thing about it is what Joe Hart brings to the team versus what Scott Bain does. Joe Hart, and it's a metric you can't measure, but he brings such a confidence to that back four.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a defender in front of him, the big man's got you. He's at your back. He can pull off a save. He can start a move. He's got that experience. I know sometimes he does pardon the pun, but the heart attack football where, a striker's closed him down and he's taking too long to pass it. But he's under instruction to do that. But also I think he does have the experience to know when to just punt it. I think he's got that in his locker.
Yeah.
Bain, for me, decent goalkeeper, maybe, but I don't think he inspires any confidence. I don't think and I think even in opposition strikers as well, bearing down in the box, Joe Hart's coming at you, it's a different feeling than Scott Bain. If he's coming out to clear a course, he's a big lad, strong, good presence, and these are all things that are invaluable. And I think we desperately need a backup keeper. I really do. And it's not even about ability, it's about having that extra bit in your locker, because as I say, if Joe gets injured, so say he gets injured, Bain comes in, that's going to affect your defenders.
Aye.
Their confidence is going to go. And if your defence is under a bit more pressure, your midfielders are affected, and your strikers need to do more work. And that knock-on effect just for that one injury to a position that you feel might not have an influence on the actual passage of play is immense, in my opinion.
Definitely. And by the way, he dealt with that pass back from Juranovic pretty well as well, didn't he? When Juranovic actually took a shot into him in the first half. That was a belter. Juranovic, for all that we love about him, that for me was one of his worst performances on Thursday. Defensively, Lawrence, I mean, he'll be remembered for his dink on the penalty kick. But I think defensively, yeah, he wasn't great.
Disrespectful, those penalties.
according to Craig Gordon.
Yeah. But yeah, listen, probably one of his worst. He's playing out of position and he's playing against the highest standard opposition he's faced. So you could see why he's maybe not had an easier time as he gets in Scotland. It'll be interesting to see when Taylor's fit. He can't be far away now. I'd imagine a couple of weeks he should be back. I know he was playing guitar for Yota in the advert, so I'm assuming his shoulder's fine now if he's playing guitar. But then it's a question of who takes right back if we move Juranovic over. Because I think once Taylor's fit, he's the guy that slots in at left back. We've been linked with a couple of left backs, the boy from Japan. Another guy that played a full season by the time we sign him, if it's true. But we'll wait and see. But hopefully Taylor's back soon. But yeah, then Juranovic is going to have the problem of shifting Anthony Ralston, isn't it? It
gives us another good dilemma to have on the right-hand side of the defence, Lawrence, something we've not had, certainly at the beginning of the season. Brilliant tribute to Bertie on the centre circle of Celtic Park. That's entertainment. You'll never walk alone. And a big number 10. We've also been hearing that, according to reports on Twitter, that the police, let me have a wee look at this. So Fans Against Criminalisation have tweeted, quite incredibly, the police have arrived to hassle Celtic fans collecting for the food bank. They have opted to fine the collection vans for being parked whilst collecting and gathering food for Glasgow's poorest ahead of Christmas. 4 fines issued of £60 each. A quite ridiculous situation, and one that we'll keep a wee eye on as the day goes on, as Scott Brown and Callum McGregor bring out wreaths to lay in memory of Bertie Auld. I think what we'll do at this stage is allow everybody to get onto the action and watch the game, and we'll come back at half-time, hopefully to speak about a rip-roaring, free-scoring, never-boring Glasgow Celtic performance. All that's left for me to say is Lawrence Conley, get the pies on, and Brian Degnan, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.